All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today we're taking on climate change, and we're using that DW documentary, Climate Change Averting Catastrophe, to guide us.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
You guys sent this one in, and it is packed with some pretty powerful imagery. We're talking melting glaciers, rising sea levels, and we see those communities already dealing with the impact of climate change.
Yeah, it really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Big time. So our mission today is to figure out where we are right now, where we might be headed, and what we can actually do to avoid, well, a full-blown catastrophe.
A critical mission, for sure. You can definitely feel the urgency in that documentary.
For sure. And they start things off in a really dramatic way. You see these extreme mountaineers, right? And they're scaling this crazy icy peak in the Alps.
Wow.
Yeah. The beauty of it just grabs you. But then it hits you, these landscapes that are becoming more dangerous because of, well, climate change.
That contrast, it makes you think, huh?
Totally. And they highlight how those rising temperatures are causing the glaciers to melt, like, way too fast.
It's alarming. They show the Aletsch Glacier in Switzerland as an example, and it's huge.
Right.
20 kilometers long and almost a kilometer thick, and it's just melting away.
It's hard to even imagine something that massive just disappearing.
Right.
So what happens if we lose all that glacial ice? I mean, they talk about tourism taking a hit, but it feels like there's more to it than that.
Definitely. Tourism is a factor, but think about the fresh water. Glaciers are a crucial source for so many communities. As they disappear, those communities, both in the mountains and downstream, are going to face some serious water scarcity problems.
So it's not just about the mountains. It has a ripple effect way beyond.
Exactly.
Mm.
And then there's that melting permafrost, which is a whole other concern. They feature Nikita Zimov, a climate activist in Siberia, who's studying the issue.
Siberia, that's like worlds away. Why should we be worried about the ground there?
Well, because when permafrost thaws, it releases huge amounts of carbon dioxide and methane, and those are the greenhouse gases that really speed up climate change. It's a dangerous feedback loop. The warmer it gets, the more permafrost melts, and the more of those gases get released, warming the planet even more.
Yeah, they showed that fisherman, what was his name? Leonid Nalatov, I think?
Right, Leah.
He lost his entire lake because of that melting permafrost. His whole way of life just gone. It really makes it personal,
Absolutely. And his story is just one of many. Climate change is already having a huge impact on people's lives, and often it's the people who had the least to do with causing the problem who are suffering the most. The documentary brings up this unfairness through its focus on Indonesia, particularly a village called Pantai Bahagia.
Pantai Bahagia. Okay.
Yeah, and it translates to Happy Beach, ironically, because it's literally sinking into the ocean.
Oh, wow. That's really sad. And that kind of leads into the whole climate migration issue, right?
Yeah.
Which they touch on.
Definitely. We're talking rising sea levels, extreme weather, desertification, all of these things forcing people to leave their homes. Millions have already been displaced, and those predictions for 2050 they're just mind-boggling. We could see billions of people on the move.
Billions.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
So we've looked at the problems, the challenges. Now, let's talk about some potential solutions, because the documentary does offer a few glimmers of hope, like that Nordlink project, for example.
Oh, right, that incredible undersea cable.
Yeah, connecting Norwegian hydropower to those German wind farms.
It's a fascinating project. It shows what international cooperation can achieve, especially with innovative infrastructure, to create a stable supply of renewable energy. So if the wind's not blowing in Germany, they can tap into Norway's hydropower and vice versa.
That's pretty brilliant. And then they dive into the work of the New Climate Institute in Germany. They've broken down climate action into these 3 levels, which I thought was a helpful way to look at it.
It is. The first level focuses on measures that are relatively easy to put into action, like making the switch to renewable energy sources and lessening our reliance on coal.
The easier stuff to tackle, basically.
Exactly. Then there's the second level. Those are the methods that are more challenging, but we know they work. Things like stopping deforestation and promoting electric vehicles. Those need more investment, for sure, and policy changes.
More hurdles to overcome.
Yeah. And then finally, there's that third level, those tough but potentially high-impact solutions. Things like really cutting down emissions from buildings, industry, and agriculture.
The systemic changes.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Those require a fundamental shift in how we produce and consume, well, everything, really.
And to illustrate this, they use a really great analogy. They say, imagine a soccer field, right? Our goal is to fill that entire field with emissions reductions by 2030. Each level of action helps us fill that field, gets us closer to our target. But they don't stop there. They go on to explore some pretty radical ideas like geoengineering.
Geoengineering, huh?
Yeah, large-scale interventions in the Earth's systems, to combat climate change. We're talking manipulating clouds to reflect sunlight, even putting sunshades in space, or capturing CO2 directly from the air.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
I know, right?
Hmm.
But they seem to be suggesting that we might have to consider these options given how urgent the situation is.
It's definitely controversial, and for good reason. While geoengineering could have some benefits, there are also huge risks and ethical concerns that come with it. We have to be incredibly careful and think about all the potential consequences before we even think about going down that road.
It's almost like we'd be playing with fire, you know,
Yeah.
trying to fix one problem, but potentially creating a whole bunch of new ones.
Yeah. Exactly. We can't afford to be reckless. But it is important to acknowledge these ideas, to have those conversations about what they could do and what risks they might pose. It's all part of exploring all of the possible solutions.
Mhm.
We have to carefully weigh those benefits against those unintended consequences. And that brings us to another approach they highlight, restoring natural carbon sinks, like peatlands.
Peatlands, okay.
Yeah, they talk about the work of Kirsten Visician in Germany. She's doing a lot to protect and revitalize these, well, vital ecosystems.
When they brought up peatlands, I have to admit, I wasn't even really sure what they were. What makes them so important in all of this, this fight against climate change?
Peatlands, they're these waterlogged areas, right, with this thick layer of partially decayed plant matter. It's called peat. And they're incredible carbon stores. They just soak up CO2 from the atmosphere.
Ah,
They point out that they only cover like 3% of the Earth's land surface, but they hold something like 30% of the carbon stored in our soil.
wow. 30%,
Yeah.
that's a lot. So protecting these peatlands, restoring them, could that be like a major part of the solution?
It could be huge. It's a really powerful example of how those nature-based solutions can help us mitigate climate change.
That's pretty amazing. Okay, so we've got these natural solutions, but then they take us to Borneo and we see all that deforestation that's happening there because of palm oil demand. It kind of brings you back down to earth.
Yeah, it's a tough reality. Palm oil's in so many things we use every day, but the way it's produced, it has such a devastating impact on the environment, not to mention those local communities.
I was really interested in that research they showed from Munich's Technical University. They're working on lab-grown palm oil. Could that be a real solution?
It could be revolutionary, if they can actually pull it off. Imagine producing sustainable palm oil in a lab. That could take a lot of pressure off those rainforests,
Well,
help make the whole industry a lot more sustainable.
it's amazing what they're doing with technology these days.
It really is. It's a great example of how innovation can help us tackle these really complex problems.
Yeah. The documentary doesn't just focus on the big solutions, though. They also highlight what we can do as individuals to reduce our own carbon footprint. Things like, cutting back on meat, using those innovative building materials they talked about to reduce energy consumption.
Those individual actions, they're so important. Every little bit counts. But it's really important to remember that climate change, it's a systemic problem, and that means we need systemic solutions too.
So it's got to be both, right? Individual action and the bigger policy changes.
Exactly. We can't just blame individuals. We need to empower people to be part of the solution.
Makes sense. Towards the end, they highlight Ecosia, that search engine that plants trees. Their founder wants to plant billions of trees by 2030. That's a pretty ambitious goal. But can planting trees really make that much of a difference?
Well, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Trees absorb CO2, right, as they grow. So planting trees can definitely help to remove some of that CO2 from the atmosphere.
So it's not going to solve everything, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, every little bit helps. And they showed how it's working in Sudan, where women are planting acacia trees to combat desertification, and it's also generating income for them.
So it's addressing like multiple problems at once.
Exactly. It's all about empowering those local communities to take action, improve their own lives, and contribute to the fight against climate change at the same time. It's a win-win.
That's great. And then the documentary ends on this powerful message about the urgency of the situation. They say that the next few years, they're absolutely crucial. We have to act now together if we want to avoid the worst of it. What are your thoughts on that message?
Yeah, it's a real wake-up call. They're basically saying that the choices we make, the actions we take in these next few years, well, they're going to have a huge impact on the future of the planet.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about everything we've talked about. The glaciers melting, that permafrost thawing, those communities that are already dealing with climate change. It feels like I don't know, like we're at a turning point or something.
We are, yeah. And I think the documentary does a good job of showing us both sides, the challenges and those potential solutions. I mean, we have the knowledge, we've got the technology, even the resources to tackle this, but what we really need is that collective will and the urgency to act.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom, but they do show a lot of, well, innovation, and people taking positive action, like those renewable energy projects, that Nordlink thing we talked about, or that lab-grown palm oil. It seems like people are really trying to find solutions.
And it's not just, scientists and inventors, it's communities coming together, planting trees, individuals making changes in their own lives. It really does take all of us.
That's a good point. They really emphasize how connected everything is. What happens in one part of the world, it affects everyone. So the solutions, they have to be global too, right?
Absolutely. We need countries working together. We need policies to change. We need technology to keep advancing. And we need people to take action in their own lives. All of those things are important.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your biggest takeaways? What really stood out to you from this documentary?
For me, it's the urgency, the fact that everything is connected and that we can actually make a difference. I mean, the climate crisis is happening now. It's affecting everyone, but we can still change things. It's not too late to act.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. And I think it's important to remember that, to have hope. We can't just, give up or be afraid to do anything. We have to take that energy and turn it into action.
I couldn't agree more. Every little thing we do, every new invention, every conversation we have, it can all make a difference.
Well said. And for everyone listening, we want to leave you with something to think about. If you could put one climate solution into action, and I mean globally, what would it be and why? We hope this deep dive has helped you understand the climate crisis a little bit better and that you'll keep learning and keep talking about this important topic. Thanks for listening, everyone.